Hi, I wanted to make a short video. I wanted to, I had some things that happened today, some thoughts, and I shouldn't really get into detail about them, but I live alone, and I can, when I want to share something, I think of you, and I want to, thank goodness you're here, and I can be able to share it. Um, I was very proud of myself yesterday for using iMovie. That's the application that I use to edit these videos together for you. I had I You may have caught a video or two where I mentioned my Madonna movie project. It's something that I started in 1998, and 1998. I wrote a screenplay, wanted to impress her, and I was naive and so forth, and so I wrote that, and they passed on it. Well, the creative artists agency passed on it, and so I sat back and I tried to. I spent a long time figuring out how to write better, and along the way, about 12 years later, I discovered Dramatica, and I've talked about Dramatica before. And when I get my documentary skills together, to the extent that I can be able to produce documentaries, with voiceover work and so forth, I want to follow up and do a better explanation of Dramatica. I have given recently. I did explain Dramatica pretty well in recent videos. Check through my playlist, uh, and I am changing the channel. You may have noticed my funny test. I called it Fancier Experiment. Uh, Posted, I think, just before this one, where I try out different things, including voiceovers and the subscribe button and so forth. So I'm getting there. I feel like I'm the last one. I feel like all these YouTubers are way ahead of me, but you've got to start somewhere. And according to the movie Coming to America, Nietzsche once said, something like one must learn to walk before can be able to run. One can't go right into running. I'm sort of paraphrasing that, somewhat paraphrasing that. But anyway, I noticed, I had a couple of bad thoughts today I wanted to share. I won't go into detail. And then I have something nice. It's the main part of what I wanted to share with you. I realized something about myself. I guess we sometimes have habits. I remember my mom would eat ice cream and or something or other, and sometimes I would point out, hey, that's not that healthy, or hey, do you realize it's not it's self-defeating, something like that. And she would say, sometimes I wouldn't even have to say it. Sometimes I would just hint at it, and then she would say, either mind your own business if she were really frustrated, or she would say, oh, it's soothing, or it's therapeutic. So there's something called LOL Laugh Out Loud Cow. These are people. These are these are YouTube personalities that are their own worst enemy, and there are certain traits that seem to be common in LOL cows. Um, they're not self-aware. Um, so I've been following. I won't mention the name, but I like to listen to watch commentaries about, or documentaries about this one, because it gives me inspiration to do my own to do my own work. There's something about him where people have criticized him for bragging that he's accomplished something, when really he hasn't really bragged. He hasn't really accomplished it, and so meanwhile I'm doing the hard work, and it's an amusing. I'll admit it. It's an amusing way of encouraging myself, or recognizing that I really am doing the diligent work, the actual work of progressing in my life, in terms of these skills. And so I've watched them. So um, I like to have my iPhone near me when I'm about to, I'm in bed and I'm about to go to sleep, and I just tend to fall asleep. And so early in the morning, I'm talking like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I have to get up. It was about three something or other. I have to get up at 5 or 5:30 in order to get dressed and then go to work. Uh, I'm looking at my bed right now off camera. Um, I found one of those videos about him because I just needed something quick to amuse myself, and so I played it, and maybe that had something to do with how I felt waking up. How I felt in my morning job. I have two jobs, and I had a different thought. I had one like bad thought in the morning job and another one in the evening job. I just got home from the evening job, and uh, I had a dream in which, for what it's worth, I wanted to put this on Facebook, but maybe I shouldn't put it on Facebook. Maybe I should just tell you about it. I I saw myself in school. I think it was elementary school. It was, dreams are vague, kind of. It was a school environment. It was a large building. See here, I have the advantage of being able to gesture and visualize it more rather than just on Facebook. I remember a building. I remember there were several floors. Like I remember 3 floors was distinctive, and I was trying to find my homeroom class. I was trying to find which room was my homeroom in order to get there, and I remember it was in the corner. You had like picture a square floor, and it was one of the rooms at one of the extreme corners, and I couldn't remember whether it was on the first floor or second. I couldn't even remember the room number. I couldn't remember whether it was on the first floor, second floor, or third floor. I sort of remember being on the third floor. So I went around, and I didn't want to be embarrassed by other kids there, and me thinking that I didn't know where I was going. And I don't know if that relates to what I was playing or anything that was being played. On YouTube, it could have entered the ear and could have inspired me to dream about it. But if it's not about, if it wasn't inspired by, let's just say, inspired by what was playing on YouTube, it seems like I was still thinking about school or thinking about, sometime I ought to do like a more in-depth thing about a video about dreams and dream interpretation. I think dreams are really when our minds are figuring stuff out and perhaps sorting through stuff and cataloging stuff, or at least perhaps dealing with it to some degree or labeling it or something. It's more introspection. It's very introspective. Dreams are, I think. Anyway, it seems like I felt embarrassed, and I didn't want to feel embarrassed. I wanted to show to them that I was competent and I was aware, and I knew where I was going, and I just couldn't find the homeroom. And even though I knew, I had an instinct it was on the third floor and it was at one of the corners. Anyway, so I woke up and I went. I didn't really feel all that great. I mean, I had to go to work. It was the day after Yom Kippur, which is Monday, and I fasted, and it was okay. I mean, I remember as a kid, fasting was a bigger deal, but now it's not such a big deal. Yom Kippur, that's, in case you didn't know, that's the Jewish New Year. There are two Jewish New Years, possibly a third or forth. I've heard like 4 Jewish New Years, but there's one Jewish New Year that's Passover, and then there's another which is typically April. I mean, the calendar shifts. The Jewish calendar sometimes correlates the same way with the Christian calendar, but sometimes it doesn't. It goes by its own days. Um, so it's always on the same day in the Jewish calendar, but that doesn't always coincide uh, to the same day in the Christian calendar. Anyway, in addition to Passover, the Babylonian New Year is Rosh Hashanah, and we've adapted the Babylonian calendar. So we've adapted the months, and so there are two Jewish two Jewish New Year's days, and so this one is Rosh Hashanah, and that was like 11 days ago, something like that. So for 9 days, starting with Rosh Hashanah, it said, "May you be inscribed for a new year." And people say Lashana Tova, which literally means for a good year. Le meaning for or to, Shana meaning year, and Tova meaning good. Lashana Tova. And so for 9 days, people are expressing wishes that to each other that that their friends and so forth are inscribed for a sweet, specifically sweet and good new year. And that kind of extends. There's an implication that they're inscribed in the book of life. Specifically in the service, it says, "May you be inscribed for a good year in the book of life." And that's for 9 days, and that you're also encouraged to seek forgiveness from anyone that you have hurt and so forth, and that's in keeping with the coming. It's very much a strong emphasis of a new year. You're trying to begin a new year with hurts and embarrassments and so forth forgiven. And so then on the 10th day, it's Yom Kippur, which is the highest holy day in the Jewish calendar. And you fast. And in ancient times, I don't know how far back, how ancient, but you are not to bathe, I think, even. I mean, very, very traditional. Not to wear something about shoes. I think it's leather. I believe it's leather. Not to wear leather shoes. You don't bathe. You don't wash. I don't think you even shave, probably. And you fast. And remember, this begins the evening. So this time it would have begun in the evening Sunday. And I think it's in the Talmud. Okay, I'll explain a little bit about the Talmud. There were there was a series of traditions that someone wrote down about 2,000 years ago, give or take 100 years. And then there were commentaries added on. So the original list was divided into 6 volumes by topic, 6 major topics. And then there was commentary added on to that and further elaboration over the years, over the centuries. So that all became bound as the Talmud. I think somewhere in there it says that you can define when evening begins if you can count 3 stars in the sky. So Sunday evening, when you were able to count 3 stars, officially it would be considered sundown, and you then begin fasting and until the following sundown. And of course, all the Jews go to Chinese restaurants or something. Fortunately, I had some food waiting for me, some little treats. I had some yogurt and so forth, and crackers, and peanut butter chocolate. I mean, chocolate peanut butter. and bread and so forth. Um, but you fast for that period, and it's like it's something, I would guess roughly it's something like Easter in terms of its importance in the Jewish calendar. Um, and you don't do any work; you cease from working. It's considered a Shabbat or Sabbath for the whole year. The whole year's Sabbath is Yom Kippur. So anyway, so Monday was Yom Kippur until Monday evening, and then yeah. So here I am Tuesday. I have to go back to work, and so I'm not feeling all that great about going back to work. Nobody probably would be unless they have a nice, happy job that they enjoy. I mean that's incorporated into their talents and what their passion. I don't have a job like that. Neither one of my two jobs is like that. So that gets into my second thought for the evening, the one I had in the evening job. So I go in and I'm thinking about this past event from high school, and I want to be delicate, not mention too much, but I had um, I had felt frustrated, and I felt these feelings that were bottled up. Like for about 30 years, there have been these thoughts roaming around, and some of them were imaginary. That I imagined this other person was yelling at me, or or being cruel in statements to me, like I would imagine them. Those were mixed in with all those comments, both positive and negative, over the past 30 years. Although the negative ones were stronger and have I felt more hurt from those. So so I messaged somebody privately, not mentioning like details or anybody's name, but I wanted to get those feelings out, and the person was very was compassionate, kind, fortunately, and said typed back some. I shouldn't even really get into it. I also don't even remember what she typed, but I'll just say that she said something like she was going along with what I was typing, and she said a few words, and then like oh that's too bad or something. I don't really even remember. And then at the end, she suggested that she said you really should move on, and I felt like it's not a matter of me moving on. Really, it's a matter of forgiveness and so forth. It's just lingering, and as I said, I think I said in the messaging there, maybe it was Yom Kippur that brought it to mind. But sometimes those thoughts just tend to linger, and I keep them bottled up. Um, anyway, then in the evening job, there are lull periods. It's not intellectually that stimulating. It's not even something in my passion. I signed up with a temp agency in order to get another job, and they said that there is a job somewhere else, full-time job. I just want a single job, and they said $18 an hour. Okay, great. Monday through Friday. Okay, that means no Saturdays or no Sundays. Thank goodness I don't have to worry about that. And like 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, wonderful. Like I want to have like a normal job. And I was talking with a coworker. There are two of us in different departments, but the departments are side by side. And so this is about 6 o'clock, a little after 6, when there's a lull period. There's a rush, and then here nothing really to do. So in moments like that, other thoughts come in. I'm nothing if not thoughtful. You probably picked that up. I'm nothing if not thoughtful, And so uh, I'm perturbed by this temp agency mentioning the DMV thing, and then opportunity, and then I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for a response from the DMV, and nothing, 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 nothing. And then I contact the temp agency, and the temp agency person says, "Oh well, if you haven't heard back in by tomorrow afternoon or something, call me back." And so I call back, and then still nothing. And from either one, well, no, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes the temp agency person's contacted me back or replied. He's pretty good about that, but just nothing. And I felt like I'm being led on, and something somewhere, somebody's not telling me something, and um, so I just felt stuck. And so um, I just felt like that. But I do want to get to something, however brief. I just want to mention the scenario that I currently have about how the Torah was written. Somebody said that I shouldn't say Bible, I should say Torah. I've been saying Bible just simply because it's less confusing. People would know the Bible, but he said, well, a lot of them, when they think about it, they think of the Christian Bible and not the Jewish Bible. Right. The Jewish Bible is the first 5 books of Moses, and then the prophets, and then the writings. And what I mean specifically is not just the Bible. I mean the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. And maybe I was wondering about Pentateuch. Sometimes I've used the word Pentateuch, literally meaning, I think, 5 books or 5 things, something like that. Penta, 5. Because Torah could also refer to other traditions in Judaism, um, in addition to being the 5 books of Moses. Anyway, I want to give a brief summary of the scenario that I think happened, the way it happened. I think that Alexander the Great conquered. He was from I think he was Macedonian. He I don't remember the dates for him, but he conquers a lot of the world, and then he dies. There are 3 successors. One takes over Greece, one takes over Egypt, one takes over Babylonia, the Babylonian Empire, and so forth. And then I think that some centuries later, there were Pythagoras has a cult built around. Well, part of the cult is this thing about 10, and arranging it in a pyramid. And there were, in this cult, apparently there was an oath or a recognition of the beauty and awe of this deity related to this pyramid of 10, and that seems reminiscent of Kabbalah, which is very much part of Judaism. There were different Kabbalistic texts written in ancient times that explained and elucidated on Jewish texts, such as the Torah and the rest of the Bible, Jewish Bible. I think that Pythagoras, and then I think Socrates, and then Plato, they were, I think Plato, one of them was a tutor of Alexander, and Plato had ideas of his own. He had an ideal society that he describes in Timaeus, and he describes 2 creation stories. He describes an absolute deity creating everything, and then a lower deity or other creations, other deities creating things after that. I think that several writers, possibly Babylonians, around 270. Well, all right. There was mention of a Moses figure, or somebody named Moses, um, in I think it's called the Letter of Aristeas. Um, there's a mention of someone colonizing uh, Judea, and the name Moses gets enters into it somehow. I forget exactly how, and I suspect that several writers got together, inspired by Plato's ideas of an ideal culture, and these are possibly Babylonians, and they used the Library of Alexandria. They used Berosus's history of Babylonia to create part of the Genesis text, and uh, part of what Manetho wrote in his Egyptiaca, which is a history of Egypt, to write as the basis for the text of Exodus, and that they constructed the five books to be arranged and read both linearly but also with cues to indicate how the text can be arranged as units so as to form, at the large scale of the five books, a wheel, possibly Ezekiel's wheel. And that also related to a channel that I should look up. I intend to look up where he was. This is a Christian who was looking through how, I can't remember what, something about angels, how the priests were there. There's a list. I can't remember which text. It's in the Bible. I can't remember which text. It lists the order of the names of the priests, and he found some correlation anyway that it would be like this. I don't want to say cross, like, because it would tend towards Christianity, but basically a vertical and horizontal line crisscrossing, and that seems also reminiscent of the is it Babylonian, the ancient tradition of the zodiac. You have the signal stars. You also have in I don't know if it bears any resemblance. In Christianity, you do have the four Gospels. They could relate to this, one, two, this thing, 1, 2, 3, 4. I remember one. It was a bishop. There was somebody in history that when asked why were there four Gospels, he said because there are four winds. And maybe that relates to this vertical and horizontal intersection. And I'm finally getting it out there. I'm sorry, I don't have details, but at this level, this is the basic scenario. I'm glad I'm finally sharing it. That you have, that when these writers were composing the Pentateuch, or the five books of Moses, they have Genesis, Leviticus, and Numbers. Genesis, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, which seems to be like a collection of people evolving as you move horizontally towards. As you move horizontally, they start as a collection of people, and they become a nation at the other end in Deuteronomy, and then going vertically, you have Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, and that within the book, the units of the book's text, each book's within a given book of these five books, within a given book, the parts of the text can be arranged in certain patterns, and that the books going this way, the three books going this way, form in terms of matrices. That is rows and columns, like a block of rows and columns, or rows and columns. And for the ones going this way, the books going this way seem to be in a like a round, circulating pattern, like a pattern like this. And there's more to it. There are more patterns to it than that, but it forms like this. And that Leviticus is right in the center, and within the center of Leviticus, you have the whole Leviticus is divided into two matrices, and there's an independent unit within or between both matrices, because each book has at least one independent unit, and the independent unit in each book going this way is in the center, and the independent unit in each book of the books going this way are either left or right. In other words, Genesis has a matrix, and then the independent unit is at the beginning, and then, of course, on the other side of this, there's an extra column. That's the three creation myths at the beginning of Genesis. Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2, and then the flood story. And then the final book has the one matrix and then the independent unit at the end. So here it's on the left, aside from the creation stories in it, beyond that. And then over here, Deuteronomy has its independent unit at the other end. So like at extreme points. And then in the middle, you have Leviticus, which is two matrices, and then you have an independent unit, dead center in between. And that independent unit is chapter 19, where it says, where it gives a series of commandments, and then after each commandment, it says, I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God. Commandment, I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God. Commandment, I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God. Right in the center, as if declaring right in the center of the whole framework, I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God. So I think it was very well organized. These writers, possibly Babylonian, again I'll say, also included sacred geometry. I think they took Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and Elohim, and they meant Elohim to refer to a plurality, not many gods, but I'm saying a wide field, and Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh being a singular. I think of black holes and I think of wormholes. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh being a singularity, and I guess the opposite of singularity, if you know what I mean, a wide expanse. So you have a singularity and a wide expanse, and in the Garden of Eden story, that's the only spot where you find the deity referred to by both names as a singular entity, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim. After that, of course, not only do you have Adam and Eve split apart, and you have Adam and Eve split from the Garden of Eden, there's a lot of splitting going on. You also have a split in terms of names. You see Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh appearing sometimes, and you see Elohim appearing in other times. And there are other patterns too. And Stan Tenen gets into a lot of patterning. He gets into the whole alphabet being arranged as a set of X, Y, a block set with X, Y, Z coordinate system in the alphabet. The alphabet typically is described, the Hebrew alphabet is typically described as 22 letters. However, there are certain letters that, when written at the ends of words, are written in a different way, and those are called the final letter forms. And if you put them together, that makes 27 letter alphabet, and 27 divides nicely into a 3 by 3 by 3 grid. And he gets into a lot more of this, and that helps to explain, this whole model emerges from that. And it helps to explain the 13 petaled rose that's described in one of the greatest Kabbalistic texts, um, the Zohar, which is a huge, it's like an encyclopedia set length of a text. And it, well, it's very elaborate to explain, but basically, you start off with a singular dimension, and you have a 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, and you build up like a cube, and then a dodecahedron, and you go in, you create a cube that exists in multiple dimensions and further dimensions and further dimensions, and that if you take a line of text, it's the first line of Genesis, Breshit bara Elohim Echad, when beginning. It's not in the beginning. It's when beginning, and so in the rest of it, that first line. If you write that around each each surface of the object, at some dimensional at when you're looking at the object, at a certain number of dimensions, it the lettering falls into a convenient pattern where I believe there are no faces of the faces of the object. There are no faces that don't have a letter on them, something like that. I'll have to refresh my memory, but it's fascinating. If you want to go check into it further, there's a YouTube channel called Meru Foundation, MERU Foundation, and the author, Stan Tenen, is dead, but they discuss his work, and they're up to about 50 episodes by now, and they're pretty lengthy. They're about an hour each episode. So I think these possibly Babylonian writers, these writers wrote the 5 books of Moses around 270 BCE, and if I really want to shock you, I suspect that over time, the area, Judea and Israel in general, took on belief in these texts, and this became an inculcated condition. This became a culture, and like Judaism became established as they taught their kids, and then the kids grew up, and then they taught, and so forth. Over time, they forgot what earlier culture they might have had, and this is a manufactured religion that just became established. And so, what I suspect from somebody else who wrote this other work, that over time, that in Rome dominated a lot of the world, and that when they were in the practice of anyway, there were Roman leaders. That was more of a republic, and then Julius Caesar came in, and there were not the Flavians, the ones before the Flavians, Claudius and so forth. You get to Nero, and during Nero's reign, there were lots of people who were angry at Nero for things being corrupt, or Rome basically falling into debauchery from a certain point of view, and that when the beginning Flavians came in, that would have been Titus and Titus's father, and I'm blanking on Titus's father, around 70 CE. Well, there had been several attempts by the Jews to overthrow Roman rule, and the Jews were hoping that there would be a Messiah, Mashiach. Mashach in Hebrew means anoint, and Mashiach means anointed one. And in the past, Cyrus, for example, being one who helped to liberate the Jews and let them have their free land and let them live in peace. There were characters like that in history, and that during Roman occupation, they were hoping that there would be a Messiah that would come, that would liberate, help, struggle, push back against the Romans and defeat the Romans, and so that they could live peaceably. And that when the Roman emperor, I'm blanking on his name, the father of Titus, had been a general under Nero, and then Nero suddenly dies, and he comes back to Rome, and then he becomes a new emperor, and there's this deification of him, and his son Titus then goes along with the deification. It's like a regular process that the emperor, when at the point of death or after death, becomes recognized as a deity and inculcated into a pantheon, and there's like a cult built around the dead emperor. And that the other cultures, the Romans were able to absorb the other cultures and in some form or the other, and that the Romans let them have their own religion as long as they recognized the emperor as God, and that the Jews refused to do that. So the Jews were still hoping that this Messiah would come to rescue them from Roman occupation. So Josephus, and again, this is the scenario that I believe happened based on some work. Josephus became added into the court of Titus, and helped from his knowledge of he was Jewish, from his knowledge of Judaism, helped them write this propaganda about how this Messiah is not the Messiah that the Jews depict, but actually a peaceful Messiah that will let the Romans, make it easy for the Romans to simply dominate the Jews, and it will pacify the Jews enough that the Jews won't struggle, won't push back against the Romans anymore. And there's a pivotal point at the year 70 CE or 70 AD. 66, there's a Jewish war from 66 to about 70, and the Jews are killed off. I mean, the Jewish army, the push back against the Romans was defeated. The Romans won, and this propaganda continued about this Messiah. And that's the scenario the way I believe it happened, suspect it happened. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. And what do you think? And I'll talk with you next time. Thanks. Hope you have a good day. Bye.